Welcome to the Truth Wins podcast. This is episode 66. We're titling it The Remedy for Fear. As always, I have my good friend Stu with me. Say hey, Stu.
Hey, Stu.
This is Todd Sherman, your host, and we want to talk about how to overcome fear, because there's been a little bit of fear going on throughout human history, but especially these last few years with COVID and all the other stuff going on in our world, economies and bad people and all the different things that can stress people out and cause fear. We hear a lot of remedies for it out there, but what actually works? So we want to talk about what works to help you with your fear, what works to help us, and then obviously what we think biblically is a good response to fear, how God can help us through fear. It's not bad being fearful of something. In fact, there are times when we should have some fear, like a grizzly bear chasing you. I think fear is a healthy response. Don't you think, Stu?
Yeah, there's times in my life where I'm grateful that I was afraid, because, there were some girls that really scared me, in high school, and I'm glad they did, because if I would have ended up marrying one of them, it would have been really bad.
Yeah. So did you just run like Forrest as soon as you saw him and you
pretty
just started
much
running?
Yeah. I was pretty much afraid of them all the time.
I don't like
because girls can do things to your, like other guys, they can tease you or can, rib you, but girl can like ruin your whole day.
Oh, yeah.
With that. Do you want to go out with me? No, you're really ugly. Oh, okay.
I know.
That kind of thing.
Well, we probably shouldn't let the ladies know this. Some have probably stumbled on it, but we are more scared of women than we are of men.
Right.
One, because it's the fear of the unknown. Because it's a crazy different worldview than us guys have. But two is, like you said, guys' fear of rejection is so key, so huge in their life that a woman or a girl, when you're young lad growing up, can just totally wreck you. So you ladies have a lot more power of us than you think. So use it for good.
That could be a future episode.
Yes, we pulled the veil back a little bit, let you see what's going on back there. So please use it for good. Build up the men around you. Don't tear them down to get what you want. So, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the remedy for fear. Fear's been around a long time, and you are Mr. Spartan. I mean, you love those Spartans and all the stuff they did. And I'm not talking about the cheerleader skit with Will Ferrell, but going a couple thousand years ago, the Spartans were pretty tough guys, but even they had some fear. Is that correct?
Right. The Spartans were famous because they were probably the ultimate warriors of the ancient world. I mean, these were the guys they were like the predecessors to the, Green Beret or the Delta Force.
Mm-hmm.
These guys were the best of the best. And what they did was they would train with other Spartans, and it was only the males who were training for war. And they would start at age 7 and they worked through age 20. And they would go through all kinds of brutal physical conditions. They would put them out in the cold, and they had to figure out ways to feed themselves. They, had to find food somehow. They had to learn to live off the land. They had to also learn to work together to accomplish things that one of them by themselves couldn't have. Like they figured out how to use their shields to push over trees. They taught them to use their shields together to knock trees over.
What?
Yeah.
How many
Spartans were
guys?
Not just the ancient world's wimps. These guys were some bad dudes.
Are you talking like 3-year-old trees with about 2-inch diameter?
Trees probably, but still, they did learn how to do things that they couldn't have done individually. It's like the value of being part of a team.
Yeah.
And so one of the things they did, they would not be able to say lots of words. They were supposed to keep their speech short and to the point. And so they were famous for their respect for elders too. They would, in fact, there's a story of an old man wandering around the Olympic Games, and he's looking for a seat. And all the, he's going through all the different sections, the Corinthians, the Athenians, the Thebans, and they're all laughing at him. And he comes to the section where the Spartans are, and he every one of them stands up and moves over to offer him the seat, and he sits down. And the rest of the Greeks applaud. And he says, I see how it is now. All the Greeks know it is right, but only the Spartans do it. And the Spartans were famous for doing it. That they did the stuff that was tough. They trained their minds, they trained their bodies to be able to take difficult conditions, because they were almost always outnumbered in battle. But they figured out how to fight as a unit and fight together. And so one of their things they had was a thing called phobologia, the study of fear. What makes people afraid? And you can imagine in battle, that's one of the worst enemies is fear. Because if the troops are afraid, they're going to run or quit. The Spartan could never leave. The one thing you got when you were 20 was your mom would give you your shield. And she said, epitauton, epitautas, come home with this or on it. You never dropped your shield, because that wasn't just for your protection. It was for the protection of the guy next to you in line. So if you were going to be a coward and run away, you'd drop your shield. It's the heaviest thing you have. So you always held on to your shield. I mean, and there's some Christian analogies to this about the shield of faith. But one of the things they figured out about fear was that there was one antidote for it. And you'd say, well, what did they do? You know, like psych themselves up to take on the Athenians, or, you know, work up a great hatred for the Thebans.
Yeah. Listen to an ACD song right before they go into battle.
Or Thunderstruck. ACDC.
Let's go, guys.
But it wasn't. It was actually, they figured out there was a force greater than fear, and that force was love. You would never let down anybody else in a group because you respected them, because you knew what they had been through, because you'd been through it. Yeah. It's like when you respect other people that you work out with on a team or something like that. Yep. You know what you've gone through together, so you don't let the other person down.
Yeah, and these are helpful things, and that's what I want to start with, is just the human remedies for fear. That there are some valid, some good things that we can do just on the human level that have been done for centuries to help us combat fear, to help us to overcome our fear. And this idea you were talking about is band of brothers. It's like there's power in numbers too. And to know that you're heading into something with other guys who have your back.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. That is a big thing in fear. And I think, again, one of the dumb hashtags is "in this together" or whatever the last 2 years. Like, well, I don't know if we're really all in this together, but it does make us feel like, okay, we can all get through this together, because we need that. You need the support from others to help you to get through things. And if you don't have that, I don't know, I think of a movie with Will Smith, I Am Legend. Right? He's the last man, or at least he thinks he's possibly the last man. He's in New York, has the whole city. But that one where his dog goes into that warehouse and it's dark and he's trying to get his dog, and then the zombies are in there kind of doing thing. It's scary. And like if he had a full battalion with him, a bunch of guys, and they all were going in back to back, then he's like, okay, it'd still be scary, but going in by yourself to go get your dog, I'd be like, oh, man, I love that dog, but I'm not going in there. Bye, Fluffy. Because it's just scary being alone, facing darkness, facing fears, things like that. So yeah, I think it's a great remedy is to have others. What are some other human remedies that help us to overcome fear?
Well, I think a lot of times people go to some group that you join with, because there's always the camaraderie of other people who are going through the same situation as yourself. Mm-hmm. Whenever you're in the waiting room to go see a doctor or something like that, you realize, well, that, you know, that person's going to go through this too. I got to go through this. You know, I mean, in the previous episode, we talked about needles. I don't like them at all. But, you know, when you get shots or your blood taken or something, you have to just kind of put your mind elsewhere. The idea of transcending where your situation is. You're not just here. You kind of put yourself out there, listen to some music or something to take your mind off. And you and I both, you know, when you're working out or something that's painful and hard, I listen to music because it takes my mind off the creaking of my joints, you know, and all the pain that it happens.
Let me guess. Bee Gees? Is that what you work out to?
Stay alive.
There's some great. I mean, I've seen you work out kind of shaking there in between. It's like he's listening to Bee Gees right now. He's listening to Tragedy. Or maybe Chicago. You like Chicago,
I do.
right?
I do like Chicago.
I bet you.
Yeah.
Do you have a cassette, like a Walkman with the cassettes in it? Is that what you listen to when you're working out?
I did at
like
one time.
Last week or a couple years ago?
No, I got a phone and this modern newfangled stuff.
No, sir.
Yeah. That
you
has,
use your phone to listen to music?
Yes. Spotify. I mean,
the world is brand new here. I would not have. Did your wife get you, or your son set you up on that?
My son got me onto the Spotify stuff.
Perfect.
You know, he showed me.
There you go.
I was like, ooh.
Do you have AirPods or do you have a little cord?
No, I'm not that caught up.
Okay.
I'm never in the same decade as technology.
Yeah.
I'm always 20 years behind.
10 to
so
20
I have
behind.
the long strings that, and I run them through my shirt so that I don't hit them.
Exactly.
And,
so that's the next. Maybe Christmas. We'll all go in on some AirPods for you because that's nice for working out alone. Just because then
my wife just got some. Mary just got some of those AirPods this Christmas.
Well,
for
she'll let you borrow them.
I don't know if I want them yet. I'm still dragging my feet.
We've digressed. Okay, so getting your mind in go to your happy tree is kind of what you're saying there. Getting psyched up for things, band of brothers, those are all valid things. I think also when there's fear, there's valid fear, but being consumed by things that cause fear, that creates more fear. There's a healthy fear. If a grizzly's coming at you, you don't want to be complacent and nonchalant. You do something. But to be focused before I hike that there could be a grizzly out there, and that's all I think about for the weeks ahead of time, and I stress